Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. Tess was, Letty was just asking me why I wouldn't dance join any of the Filipino, the dance group. And I said, oh, I can't go jumping around, but the alay dance was just so nice and graceful. Kaya yun. And the latik, wow, maglalatik, that's pretty awesome. Of course, I'm not sure we have enough young men to do it, but who knows? Maybe we can persuade Yan.
What about the spouses?
The spouses, yes. Okay. For our next speaker, Leticia Manuel Perin is also one of the founding leaders of our local Filipino-American Association. She graduated from the University of the Philippines, Bachelor of Science in Community Development, to reflect her growing interest in building communities. And when she moved to the US, she definitely gave her all to our local community, not only for our Filipino-American group, but also for the wider Coos Bay North Bend community. The lady with a lovely voice. She sings with the Sweet Adeline Singers and is also a member of the Church of the Holy Redeemer Choir. Please welcome Letty Perin.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Susan. Mabuhay and welcome, everyone. All right. My story begins with my immigration to the United States. However, my story will not be complete if I did not tell you of my brother's own journey to this country, because he was the one who brought me here. I am the youngest of 3 siblings. My father was a chief mechanic in a candy factory, while my mother had a small jewelry business, but mostly stayed home to care for us. When Geronimo, that's my brother, Jerry, the oldest, was 18 years young, and after graduating from technical vocational school, he decided he wanted to apply to the US Navy. The year was 1964. Gosh, so old. And at the time, the US Navy Recruitment Center was in the US Naval Station, Sandy Point in Cavite City. The applicants were given written as well as physical exams. Jerry passed all the exams and met all the requirements and was flown to the US for boot camp. When Jerry completed boot camp, he was enlisted for 4 years. Some were selected to join the US Coast Guard, and he was one of them. In 1969, Jerry wanted to petition for our family to come to the US. My mother did not think that it was a good idea at the time. My sister was in her 3rd year of nursing school at La Concordia College, and I had just been accepted to attend the University of the Philippines in Diliman. My mother was a firm believer in having a good education, especially for her daughters. In the years that followed, Jerry petitioned for my father, who died before he could come to the US, and then for my mother, who came to the US in 1977, while Jerry was stationed in Alaska. In 1978, Jerry started the petition for me and my sister, Aurora. I was still hesitant to go because I was living a comfortable life. I had a good home with my mother and sister. I had good friends and a good job at the UP Padre Faro campus, where I was also pursuing my master's degree in public administration. The truth is, immigrating to the US was not one of my dreams. Considering my activism back in my college days at UP Diliman, those of you who have lived in the early 1970s would know this, would share this experience with me. However, at this time, my mother was the one who urged me to come to the US. She said I could always go back to the Philippines if I did not like living there. So I ventured on the task of completing the necessary papers to come to the US. My brother provided the supporting documents. It did not take long for me. The entire process only took 2 years. And on November 22nd, 1980, I entered the US. Yes, I've been here 37 years. My brother was stationed here at the time, so I went straight from Manila to Coos Bay, Oregon. I would like to note that my brother's petition for our sister Aurora would take a long time because she was already married and had a child. She was able to come on her own as a registered nurse much later. Okay, back to me. I got my green card and my social security number right away. Now I can work and stay in the US forever. But the transition was not that easy. It was a big adjustment for me to come from a big city to a smaller town, to understand its culture and values, to realize that now I have to speak in English all the time, and to get acclimatized to the cold weather. There was no public transportation, so I had to rely on my brother and sister-in-law to drive me around to look for a job. The kind of work I did in the Philippines as a researcher was not readily available in Coos Bay. The community college did not even have a research department. On top of that, my sister-in-law and I were having disagreements, and I did not want to be the cause of their marital problems. I had to find a job. Fortunately, I got hired at JCPenney as the advertising personnel. So after only 5 months of living with my brother and his family, I moved out of their home into an apartment, just walking distance from my place of work. A Coast Guard family, both Filipinos, helped me to move. There wasn't really much to move, 2 luggage, and I didn't have any furniture. So for the first time, I was living alone in another country, far away from my mother and sister, relatives and friends. It was a tough time. To make both ends meet, I got another job as a cashier in a restaurant, also walking distance from home. My apartment was centrally located in Coos Bay. So I just walked to the bank, the library, park, the grocery store, the church. When the weather was bad, my co-workers would pick me up and they would drive me home. They also included me in their social network. I liked my job, especially at JCPenney. I did the newspaper, radio, and TV advertisings. And I got to meet a lot of people in the media and the community. I also had a lot of Filipino friends who often visited and took time to drive me around. They helped me a lot. I will never forget the goodness and kindness of people who helped me, and I am forever grateful. In August of 1983, I visited my mother in the Philippines and told her that I was coming home for good. I've been in the US for 3 years now. But I told her I had to go back to the US to end the lease to my apartment, tender my resignation at JCPenney, and say goodbye to friends. But in November of that year, I met Peter Perrin, a wildlife biologist. Wildlife. We met at a friend's wedding. Peter and I got married in October the following year at the Holy Redeemer Catholic Church in North Bend. We made our home in Coos Bay. Peter taught me how to drive. And I continued to work for JCPenney, even the birth of our first son, Robert. When our second child, David, was born, I decided to quit work to be a full-time mom. I volunteered in school, in my church, and helped friends in need whenever I can. It was my time to give back and lend a helping hand. Peter built a new home for us where we have hosted a lot of Filipino parties. I was one, as she said, I was one of the founding members of OCFAA and has served it in different capacities. I also became the godmother to several children, now adults. I joined the Seabreeze Harmony Chorus of Sweet Alliance International and have been a member since 2002. In 2004, our son Robert died. To honor his memory, Peter and I made an endowment to the Marshfield High School Scholarship Fund. Every year since then, we select 3 graduating students to receive the Robert Manuel Perrin Memorial Scholarship Award. Our other son, David, graduated from the University of Oregon with honors, magna cum laude. I'm a proud mom. With a degree in economics. He is a project manager at an investment firm and lives in Vancouver, Washington. Peter and I divorced but remained friendly. Last July, we dined together to celebrate my 65th birthday. I still do volunteer work, enjoy having good times with good friends, and doing arts and crafts. One of my great joys is visiting the Philippines. I spent Christmas and New Year there for the last 2 years. I loved it. Ang sarap magtagalog. I thank God for family and friends, and I thank God for every blessing. Thank you very much. Salamat.
Thanks so much, Letty. That's one amazing woman, and we are all proud to know her. Our last speaker is Susana Laura Thuson. She is based in Waldport with her husband, Dr. Gary Thuson. They have 4 children and 12 grandchildren. She studied for 3 years at the University of Santo Tomas in the Philippines until the family moved to Davao in southern Philippines. She then finished her Bachelor of Science in Medical Technology from the Immaculate Heart of Mary College in Davao City. She retired 3 years ago and is now enjoying the fruits of her labor and her very close and loving family. She loves reading, plays the piano, cooking, line dancing, and of course, playing with her grandchildren. Unfortunately, she had the flu. So today, her sister, Tess Hansen, will tell us her story.
Can you do it? No, I do it. Do it. Defend your sister.
I'm sorry she can't make it. She just called me last night that she has a severe cold and flu. And she didn't sleep well last night, and she tried to do it today, but she can't make it. So I'm left with this task again. I've not read the other part and come to the night, just incoming to the night. This is not mine, that's why it's hard. To share my experience with the United States immigration, my accomplishment, and how I adjusted in coming here to the United States. The U.S. immigration is very complicated and difficult. There's much confusion as it has its work. There are limitations on admission to this country. Each of us has different experiences with immigration. Some had lots of difficulties, others were effortless. My experience in getting a visa was easy, trouble-free, simple, and painless. I was blessed to have a father that was connected with the U.S. Embassy, so my papers were processed quickly. I was approved with a student visa in 1969. I came to the United States to further my study. I applied for 5 colleges and 3 accepted my application. I chose St. Francis School of Medical Technology in Blue Island, Illinois, which is a few miles from Chicago. I was approved to do my graduate studies as an exchange student and on a scholarship program. To stay in the scholarship program, I had to maintain an average point 3.5 to 4. The school was run by nuns. The students were provided a dormitory, and most of us worked at a hospital on weekend to have extra money. I cried myself to sleep every night for several months. Luckily, food was not a problem as I grew up eating American food since I was little. After finishing my study, I took an ASCP. That I don't know what it meant. I know it's a test for medical technologies. National board examination entitled me to work any places in the U.S. But there are 3 states in the United States that require medical technologists to pass their own state exam. I believe planning ahead is a way of preparing myself for the future. So I took the California State Board just in case I decided to move to that state. From Chicago, I went to look for a lawyer to help me apply for a permanent residency since I was on a student visa. I asked my father to ask me on applying for it, but I was fortunate enough to have a lawyer that used to work at immigration office. He was able to put me on the docket control. Now I can stay in the U.S. as long as I wanted, but not return if I leave the country. I finally got my permanent residence later on and then applied for my citizenship. After my lawyer arranged my status, I applied at the New York Blood Bank and was hired the same day. I only stayed for 3 months for the cost of living was so high. I returned to Chicago and I got a job at Lewisburg Hospital where I work in the lab. I love adventure and seeing new places. So 3 years later, I moved to Eastern Oregon, where I was in charge of the blood bank at Grande Hunt Hospital.
Grand Ron.
Oh, Grand Run. Okay. Sorry. My wandering feet brought me to Galveston, Texas. I was employed as a hematology supervisor at the University of Texas Medical Branch, which is the number 10 largest hospital in the U.S. I met my husband in this hospital, got married, and had 2 children. It was not easy juggling children and working full-time while my husband going to medical school. After he finished his medical school, we moved to California to do his internship at UC Davis. And we had a 3-child by then. I worked at a community hospital as a hematology supervisor and also taught classes on the subject for the short period of time. For 2 years later, we moved to Anchorage, Alaska, where we had our 4th child and final. My husband worked as an emergency room doctor, and I decided to work part-time as a physician medical laboratory. In 1986, we moved to Walport, Oregon, and built our own clinic. I was the clinic manager, nurse, and a laboratory technologist. We planted roots, bought a home, and raised 4 children. In 2014, after 28 years of service, We closed our door and retired. Well, sort of. In 2015, we went on medical mission to the Philippines for 18 months and now actually retired. While getting a visa was painless, I know. The rest of the journey wasn't so smooth. School was hard, life was filled with many trials. My parents instilled in me the values of hard work, self-reliance, and independence. With perseverance and determination, I was able to overcome difficult times and reach my goal in life. As according to Waldo Emerson, an American atheist, lecturer, and poet wrote, when you are in God's gift, what you are is God gives to you. What you become is your gift to God. We all migrated here to the U.S. in different reasons, some for religious, political, economic, educational advancement, or for the betterment of ourselves and our families. This is a land of opportunities. We should honor and respect this country that has given to us a chance to improve ourselves and be independent. We, as migrants, should also thank all the soldiers who have given their lives so we can have freedom and peace in this country. I thank the Lord for giving me the opportunity to here in this magnificent country, for having the talent and ability and strength to finish my studies, for passing the board exam, for having good jobs, for meeting my husband and having my families. I also hope and pray that each of us who migrated in this country are grateful for all the blessing we have received. Thank you. Sorry.
No, you can say sorry. That's amazing, Tess. Thank you so much for sharing Susan's story with us. And, you know, even for us who know these ladies, it's hearing their stories. It's like learning about them all over again, and which gives us so many more reasons to love them all the more. They're such strong women. It's amazing. And now, I think what we're going to have a question and answer period, which will be moderated by Miss Ligaya. Thank you.
Ligaya Hamburg, our president.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming here. It is our pleasure, the Filipino American National Historical Society, to listen and hear all the stories, how different and yet similar. So we listen to everybody's stories, and we see all the differences, and we love to hear that they too had suffered, and yet they also have a lot of successes. In view of all the current political events that we see. My first question, I'm opening this floor to everybody to ask questions, but I have one particular question and I would like to address it to our activist. Here's a quick question.
Okay.
Hearing your background as a UP activist, and in the current political arena, with Trump administration really flowing in, and with our own Duterte in the Philippines trying to do the martial law, and yet our Filipina instinct says we have to be quiet and peaceful and accepting. How do you reconcile those characters?
Well, you know,
Miss Universe.
well, actually, when we had our election here in the U.S. in November, I was in the Philippines. I could have opted to vote while I was in the Philippines, but I didn't, because I didn't like neither of the candidates. And you know, had I been here, I would not have voted anyhow. I mean, that was not a good decision, you know, as my friends would tell me. But it's my decision. I cannot vote for any of them. With Duterte, you know, the one thing I love the most is being in the Philippines, is being with my countrymen, you know, being with Filipinos and just, you know, the culture I embraced, and having Duterte as the president is different. You know, in a way that, for me, I think the due process of law has been thwarted. You know, there's no due process. They just do whatever they want, and so I don't really know how, you know, her question is very legitimate, but I don't really know how to reconcile my feelings towards these two different kinds of administrations. I don't...
Peace.
Peace.
Peace, yes. Well, yeah. Peace. Makibaka, wag matakot.
Thank you very much.
Anybody? Who else has a question? I have another question. And this is addressed to the mother of Yan. You brought, when did Yan come here?
They came in five months after I came. That was 2007.
So how old was Yan?
She was 9.
And how old is she now?
She's actually 21 now.
Okay.
Get the math right.
So actually, what happens here is, what's your name again?
Rosalina.
Rosalina is actually raising an American kid. So raising an American kid, what do you think? What are the problems, and how is it different from raising her had you been in the Philippines?
Oh, wow. Raising them. Okay. I am fortunate enough to have an old-fashioned husband. So he's very much Filipino in terms of raising children. But one thing I am heartbroken is letting them go and like work. They have to work for themselves to go to college. And us as Filipina, you know, we are like, we can sell our cows or use our house for like a collateral to loan just to send them to college. But here it's very different. You're on your own, and my heart was breaking that time. But seeing them and what they become, that was priceless. Both of my children has 4 years scholarship, housing included. So I am really lucky to see them growing with my husband. I'm lucky, I guess. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Yes.
Yes,
This is Al Newman, and Al used to be a president of the Philippine Historical Society, and also he happens to be the husband of Marisa. What's your
I
question?
have a question for this young lady about
Yes.
physical
Ruby.
therapist,
Yes.
the certification, because people come and